Alright, so since SOE have posted pictures of prototypes of Malorne's upcoming changes to the Hex system, and Malorne has subsequently been dubbed the hero of Planetside and Araxis by Reddit, I think now is a good time to go over some of Malorne's other ideas that he's been kicking around for a good while now that haven't received the same overwhelming amount of positive feedback from the community. And the thing I want to highlight here today, as you can see on the screen, is the no deploy zones for the AMS Sunderers. And as you can see here, it got downvoted into oblivion on the roadmap. And I think this is a pretty big issue with the roadmap is, unfortunately, and I think Higby's brought this up, is the fact that a lot of these devs go on here and post something that's completely doesn't tell you anything, and people just have a knee-jerk reaction, don't really understand exactly why this change is going to work or why it would be a good thing, and they just, as you can see, shut it down straight away, which gives the developer a lot of negative feedback. And as we can see here, the no deploy zones have been completely unscheduled now. So I think this is going to be a good point to go over, and just to show people why it should be implemented into the game and what positive things it's going to bring to Planetside 2. And to do this, we need to go over the flow of the battles, how they're supposed to flow, how they're supposed to work, and how the game mechanics are supposed to function. So I think something that a lot of people don't understand is the fact that Sunderers have a shorter spawn time than regular base spawns. And let me just demonstrate this right now. So let's just go into the suicide menu here. And you'll see in a moment that the Sunderer allows me to spawn a good 4 to 6 seconds faster than a base spawn. So here we are at Allerton. I'm respawning now. Watch that Sunderer. Look at it light up there. It's going to go there 2 seconds. And we've still got 5 seconds left there to try and spawn at the Allerton main room, whereas I could have spawned at the Sunderer much earlier. Now this is important. This is very important. See, the idea of a base assault is the defenders have a geographical advantage. They have the advantage of the location. They have the high ground. They have the spawn that cannot be taken away. They have the location advantage. They have the defensive location advantage. The idea of the attack is that they're meant to have the spawn advantage. They're meant to spawn in faster and quicker than their opponents, and it effectively allows them to bring essentially more troops to the battle. Even though you could have 48 people versus 48 people, the fact that the attackers are spawning in faster than their opponents effectively means that at any given moment they're going to have more troops on the field, because obviously once you get into a good fight there are casualties non-stop, but the attackers will be respawning and replenishing their supplies much faster than the defenders will if the defenders do not actually bring in a defensive AMS. But of course the defenders do have that advantage, is they have, as you can see here in a biolab obviously, we have this hard spawn which cannot be removed, and it's in a strong location that allows us to immediately just jump out and attack these positions, whereas the attackers obviously have to come in from the pads, they have to come in from these little tiny rooms where they get bottlenecked. They have this disadvantage where they have to try and force their way through these choke points. Now a biolab doesn't have the problem that I'm about to talk about, and this is because basically the biolab essentially has an innate no deploy zone. Where can you deploy a Sunderer in a biolab? Well, short of bringing one up in a galaxy, you can't. You can't get a Sunderer closer to the points than the defender's spawn is, and this is a big issue outside in other bases. So we'll just move over. We'll go over to here. Okay, so we'll have a look at Havar, the tech plant. Now this is the defender spawn here. That's where they spawn it. Now they have the location advantage. They seem to have the location advantage. The attackers spawn at the tower, spawn in over here. The defenders are closer. They have that advantage there. The attackers, once they get a Sunderer, obviously somewhere, they'll spawn in faster, but for the moment the defenders are closer. And here's where the south gen is, here's where the north generator is. Now what happens? What happens when I drive a Sunderer all the way from the tower here and park it right behind the shield generator? Now suddenly, as an attacker, I spawn in faster and my spawn point is closer than the defender's spawn room. This is a pretty big deal, and this is essentially why numbers are such a big deal in the game. As soon as a Sunderer gets into position, gets into a strong position, it is very difficult for attackers, for defenders who are outnumbered, to respond against that. Their attackers are in a stronger position. Their attackers are spawning in faster, which basically multiplies their advantage even further. They already have more numbers, and now they essentially effectively have more numbers on the field because they're spawning in much faster. So how do you compete with that as a defender? You can't. The defenders are spawning, the attackers are now spawning in past choke points. If we go and have a look, in fact, let's look at an AMP stage. That's another good example. So have a look at Paris. Now obviously the walls act as a bit of a choke point here. If you're an attacker, you've got to try and funnel through these areas here. You've got to try and funnel in through the back area there. Until a Sunderer gets inside the base. Now what happens if I drive a Sunderer, the shields go down, and I drive a Sunderer all the way inside the base here, and this is a common place we'll do it, we'll drive it in the back doors here, we'll park it here. Now suddenly, we've got about an equal run distance. It's slightly shorter for us, the attackers. We'll run from here to the shield generator. We have a slightly shorter run than the defenders, and we're spawning in faster. And we're past the choke points now. We can get up on top of the parapets, on top of the walls. We can get our high ground if we want. We can hop up here, use the walls, shoot down in the courtyard. Suddenly, the defender's location advantage is gone because we can spawn inside the base. And this is a very big issue. And I just want to go... We'll talk about another base now. In fact, we'll roll to another clip in just a second. And I'll show you another example of an innate no-deploy zone that exists within the game. Okay, so here we are over at Split Peak Pass. Now, this is a base that has changed quite significantly since beta. Now, some of the Vanu players won't know what I'm talking about here because they didn't get much time to play on it. But initially, when Amerish first came out, you see this rock wall that I'm standing on? This rock wall here, this didn't exist. And the reason this was put in was because what we used to do at Split Peak Pass was, you see this northern side of the cliffs? We would drive Sunderers up here and then jump them over the cliff and straight into the base. Now what this did, as you can see, let's open up Split Peak Pass. As you can see, this completely ruined the flow of the base. And what we were talking about before, how the defenders are meant to have the location advantage, the terrain advantage, and the attackers are meant to have the spawn and the numbers advantage. It didn't play out like that because what this did, as you can see here, Split Peak Pass is a base situated by big impassable mountains on the south, big impassable mountains on the north, and the east and west are nice little choke point funnels with shielded gates. Now, what this did, as you can see here, there's a defender spawn room down here. What this did, instead of going through these funnels and being funneled into a congested area and cut down to size by the defenders, what it was, the attackers would just drive up the backside, the north side of Split Peak Pass, and then dump Sunderers into this area here, generally speaking right behind this crescent building. And suddenly, the attackers have both a location advantage. They have this high ground here. The defenders, if they want to come across, have to cross this tiny little bridge, get congested, or go up through the low ground to get to the points. The attackers are closer to the points again, and suddenly they have both the spawn advantage and both the spawn advantage and the terrain advantage. And that completely ruined the flow of the fight. So one of the things that Malorn did, and he came in quite proud when the change was put in, he said, look at this new shiny rock wall that we put in around the north side of Split Peak Pass. Of course, about 10 minutes later, I posted a screenshot saying along the lines of suck my dick, and it was a Sunderer right down there, parked right down there once again, and it had been driven over the top of this wall and down there. And keep in mind, this is actually version 2 of the wall. It got changed again because basically we found a way just to basically force the Sunderers over the top and straight back down into the backside of that crescent building. And I honestly believe that given enough time, we'd do it again. And I have some ideas of how to do it, but in all honesty, can't really be bothered that badly because the thing is, this idea of the rock wall is again another form of a natural no deploy zone. The idea is to keep the Sunderer away from somewhere that it would completely ruin a fight, where it would give the attacker an overwhelming advantage against the defenders. And for all you people out there who complain about getting crushed by numbers, getting wrecked by, oh, you Enclave Light, you're a dirty old Zerg, you do nothing but spam us with an overwhelming amount of numbers. Well, this is the kind of thing that will help a lower number of defenders defend successfully against attackers and will help mitigate the huge overwhelming advantage that numbers currently has in the metagame. Because that's what it is. Like, numbers play is probably the biggest factor right now. Numbers and correct loadouts are the biggest factor, in all honesty, in what determines a fight. And it's why you'll often see us stick together, because we know it's a big factor. It forces big fights, and we roll in a big group. So if you want to have your platoon hold out against 2 platoons, you need to have some kind of terrain advantage, and you need to be able to prevent the enemy from having that ability to circumvent your terrain advantage. And in all honesty, Split Peak Pass, you can still get Sunderers right up here and then just jump over the top of the wall. In all honesty, the Sunderers should be forced to deploy further north, as is another good 50 to 100 meters north right now, because it's still, even when you can still deploy right here. You can see, if you deploy where I'm standing right now, it still gives you pretty much the same amount of room to run to these to these flags, to the shield generator. Of course, is a big deal. That shield generator, once those shield generators go down, suddenly the shield walls go down and tanks just flood the interior and cut the middle off. So that's a pretty big deal. And all honesty, the Sunderers should probably be restricted further over to here so the defenders have time to get up there. But that's a discussion. The actual base layout is a discussion for another time. Now, I know a lot of people are really worried about how the no deploy zone is going to interact with bases, and a lot of them are going to cite some of the Indar bases. Now, this I think is a bit of a mistake. To be completely fair and brutally honest, Indar is a failed map. There are a lot of shit bases, shit designs that just do not work. Look at Army Labs, that's a complete crap hole. The Highland Solar, again, not a very defensive base. NS Research Labs, why do these tiny little holes exist? They just shouldn't be there. And this is the same. Esmir, again, it's better than Indar, but at the same time, it needs some work. Amrish is a much better example of what a base should look like, how the map should be made, how the bases should be designed. And I think going forward into Saris as well as Hossen, that the bases are going to be much better designed, even further improved, especially now that developers can actually create proper tunnels to fight and defend against, which means vehicle spam will not be quite as much of an issue, because that's another big deal. The fact that vehicle spam really also dictates a fight. And that's, again, being able to get those Sunderers close, getting those shield generators down in Split Peak Pass is a very big problem, being able to deploy so close to that. So this is why we should have no deploy zones in Planetside 2. It's to mitigate that numbers game. And I honestly think you're going to feel the numbers a lot more, especially since with the coming changes to how the hex system is going to work, it's going to focus much bigger fights. You're going to find you're getting hit by much larger concentrations of enemies. So if you want a decent chance to hold out, you're going to need the ability. You really will honestly need the ability to have that terrain advantage. Now, you might also notice that Buzz, of course, posted about this, about having no deploy zones, and this is one of the big reasons he brought up was to have tiered gameplay. Right now, there is not much flow in battle, because how the fight usually goes is, we start on the outskirts of a base, so let's use, alright, Anasecure. We'll use Anasecure as an example here. This is generally how the fight at Anasecure will go. We're on the outside, we'll bum rush some Sunderers in, we'll sort of fight away slow, someone will manage to bum rush Sunderers in, then we all spawn inside the base and suddenly the fight's over. Because we're just crowded in, we're closer, we're spawning in faster, we're on top of the cap point, which is right here, and that's just game over. Defenders are stuck all the way over there. Same goes for a tech lane. Havar, the fight's sort of progressing fairly naturally, we're fighting inching forwards, and then suddenly, boom, someone gets a Sunderer here at the southern shield generator, boom, someone gets a Sunderer at the northern shield generator, and that's it, lights out, game over. That's the end of the fight, because we're now closer, we're spawning in faster. Sometimes we'll have a numbers advantage, and it's just too difficult for the defenders to even stand up against that. It is very, very difficult to take that on. And it's just that it's very quick, and it's killing fights too quick. This goes back to just how we kill a fight too quickly. It's sort of progressing slow, and then it's suddenly, with the snap of your fingers, it's completely over. And it just comes down to that Sunderer getting into that Jesus spot, getting into that really good position, and just belching out an unending tide of troopers. So I know some keyboard warriors by now will be banging away furiously on their keyboards trying to argue with me, but I just want you to stop, take a deep breath, and think. What are some of the hardest places to attack? What are some of the easiest places to defend? Where you feel those overwhelming numbers are just so much less. It becomes so much less of a deal. Think about it. Think really hard about where it is. And probably the first thing that springs to mind is a biolab. And again, just think back. Think back to those natural no-deploy zones. You can't get a Sunderer inside a biolab. You have to put it a little bit away, and if you want to get in, you've got to go through a choke point. You cannot bypass those choke points. And this has been a big deal across all of beta, across all of the revamps, such as getting rid of Galaxy AMSs. Think about it. It's all been about removing the ability to bypass defensive choke points, to bypass defensive locations. At a biolab, you've got to go through those pads, or you've got to go through those tiny teleporter rooms. Remember how we used to approach attacking Havar Tech Plant? Remember how we used to approach that with a Flying Galaxy? We just fly right past it. We go, you know what? Quartz Ridge Camp, even though it wasn't the huge defensive location it was, just fly right past it. West Highlands Checkpoint, just fly right past it. Now the fact that you actually have to move Sunderers into position, it created better gameplay. And this is, again, along those same lines. It's just saying, okay, you can't suddenly have hundreds of troops into a critical location inside a base, instantly overwhelming the defense before they have any chance to react, fight, hold out, or call for help. That's what no deploy zones will change. So I really do implore you Planetside 2 players out there to really reconsider the no deploy zone. I get the feeling that SOE are going to take another crack at this, that we'll see this rearing its head once again, and hopefully in a better fashion. Jay Good, I'm looking at you. You did not post this very well at all, did not flesh this out, and I hope the next time they post ideas like this, which are very critical to the game and the improvement of the game, that they really take the time to do what Buzz does and post a novel. It helps. It really does help people just sit down. Some people go TLDR, too long, didn't read. But other people who really want to know, really are invested in this game, love this game, and want to know why that change should be considered, will just sit through there, they'll read through it and go, okay, alright, that actually makes a fair bit of sense. Let's give it a shot. Rather than we have this overwhelming knee-jerk reaction of just no. And I'm just going to close this out by saying, I know some people are going to say, well, what about restrictions in the game? Doesn't that restrict our gameplay? You know, obviously restricting things are bad, and I think this is one of the biggest reasons for the backlash. The fact that, besides the fact it wasn't fleshed out, people just immediately saw, well, that restricts us. That's a negative, that's therefore bad. You've got to remember, restrictions, it's a game. Restrictions make games work. Take soccer, for example. You can't touch the ball with your hands. The keeper can't just pick up... Imagine if we didn't have the restrictions of handballs. The keeper would pick up the ball and run at the enemy goals. You know, it just wouldn't be soccer. It wouldn't make the game what it is. It wouldn't be fun for someone who wants to play soccer. Take chess, for example. If every piece moved like a queen, you wouldn't have chess. It wouldn't be tactical. So do not just immediately assume that because we are limiting an ability to do something or removing a strategy, that it limits the game. I honestly feel that this will improve the viability of tactics, especially when you're playing on a defensive role outnumbered. It will improve that viability because you will actually have a good chance of defending, or at least delaying, against superior, overwhelming numbers. Anyway, I hope this has helped you understand the true intentions behind Sunder and no deploy zones, and has helped you understand how it's going to benefit Planetside 2. And hopefully we'll see it back on the board again soon. Malone might have another crack at bringing it up to the table once again, of course, along with those prototypes for the hex changes and neutral hexes. I'm looking forward to those a lot, and I hope to see Sunder and no deploy zones along with them fairly soon. Because like Galaxy AMSs and the old Mag Riders, being able to put Sunderers in a good spot and then having them belch out troops to bypass a defensive choke point or location is just too good. It's good, it's so good, it's overpowered. Simple as that. And this is coming from the Enclave. We're an infantry outfit that has a lot of infantry and a lot of Sunderers, and we'll jam them in whatever locations we please and spam the hell out of them all day long.